I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm really frustrated or angry, it really helps to smash some ice. It's a very healthy way of getting out the frustration and the anger. I'm going to switch this over now. There you go. Feels great. And it's important to find a safe way to get out your anger rather than taking it out on other people or actually breaking something that is irreplaceable or harming something that you don't need to. So smash away. So as I just showed you, it's sometimes good to find a healthy way to get out your anger. And I just did that with some ice. Anyway, in this video, I'm going to talk about why it's important to express your anger and also some healthy ways to actually vent your anger in addition to smashing some ice. I'm Allison, and welcome to my Elder Gal journey. I have a master's degree in counseling psychology, and I worked for years as a bereavement counselor. So anger is one of the 5 stages of grief, and if you watched my first video in this series, you know that I talked about the fact that not everyone feels anger when they're grieving, and that's fine. Some people never feel a lot of anger, and so they don't really have to vent it. Some people are much more kind of calm and steady in their approach to life. They don't get angry a lot. That's great. Unfortunately, that's not true for the rest of us. I've dealt with anger in my own grief process, and I know lots of people who have done the same. So when you are angry, it's important to not stuff it, in other words, not suppress it, because you can actually make yourself sick. And it's important not to let it out or take it out on the wrong people. Or any people, actually. Don't take it out on other people. Don't take it out on your pets. Don't take it out on valuable objects around your house. Don't destroy things in your anger. But it is important to have healthy ways to, basically release it. So I'm going to talk about some of those ways in a moment. But first I want to ask you to please tap the like button and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out, and I will be able to continue to make videos on the grieving process for you. So before I get into some healthy ways you can actually vent your anger, I want to talk about what the value of anger is. I remember when I was a child, one of my favorite movies was Ben-Hur. I'm sure many of you have seen that before. And there's a great scene in the video where Ben-Hur has been sold to a slave ship, and he's rowing this slaving ship for the Romans, and he's upset, he's pissed off. And at one point the commander or whatever that's on the ship notices that he really is showing like the anger's in his eyes, and he looks at him and he says, you really want to kill me, don't you? He says, that's good, hate keeps men alive. And that stuck with me when I was a child. Hate keeps men alive. And so later on, I remember reading about the Holocaust. And I remember that one of the authors that wrote a fabulous book about surviving the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl, wrote about that there were 2 distinct kinds of people that survived the Holocaust or survived the concentration camps. And the first group of people got angry. They got angry and they said, the Nazis aren't going to defeat me. They're not going to kill me. They're not going to break my spirit. And many of them made it through it, because anger, like the guy described in Ben-Hur said, it's very similar to hatred, and it really will keep you alive. The other kind of people that survived the concentration camps were people that very much thought like Viktor Frankl did, which is they decided to only focus on what they had control over, which is that they focused on the beauty around them, whether it's a flower growing in the yard or a tree or the beautiful sunrise or something like that. And they didn't focus on all the things they didn't have control over, which of course were many things in their world at the time. So that stuck with me as well. And then years later, when I was working as a bereavement counselor, what I noticed is that the people who actually did feel anger tended to get through the grief process, let's say, more efficiently than other people. It was generally less prolonged. They were able to fight through all the other feelings they were having, and that really served to help them. And so I'll illustrate that with an example from I went to see this husband and wife, and they had lost their 21-year-old son. And he had died of leukemia. It was a very sudden death. You know, he died within a matter of, I think, 6 months from the time he was diagnosed. And the parents were really struggling, but they were dealing with their grief in different ways. And when I went to see them the first time, the husband was just bereft. I mean, he was crying. He just couldn't even do anything. He was really, really almost paralyzed by the pain of what had happened. His wife, the mother of this young man who had died, was angry. She was pissed off. She was like, "Why did my son have to die right at the beginning of, his adult life?" And I worked with them for a matter of a few months, and I really had a hard time really helping the husband, because he was kind of in his own little, shell of sadness. I couldn't really get him to see anything but the pain of this. And so he went downhill and actually he ended up himself in the hospital, because he wasn't eating, he wasn't sleeping, and he just was exhausted. And he did survive, he did come through it eventually. But he had a much harder road than his wife did. And his wife was angry a lot. I mean, she had moments of sadness and she cried and things like that, but she's mad. And that anger gave her strength. It really gave her strength. And so I worked with her on some of the strategies I'm going to tell you about in a moment, in order to get through that anger and to get through that grief. And she actually did really well. She recovered in about half the time, I would say, that her husband took to overcome that grief. So what are the things that you can do that are healthy, that are not going to harm another person or destroy, valuable objects, or, wreck your car or whatever? What can you do that is actually helpful? Well, I showed you the first one, which is smash something you can smash. So smash ice. If you have a friend that's doing a demolition of something, go help out. Destroy something that is, it's good to destroy. One of the things that I knew people used to do when I lived in Arizona was they would take eggs, like old eggs, and they would go out in the desert and they would throw them against the saguaro cactus. And they would make this kind of satisfying popping noise as they hit the cactus. And I did that a couple times with somebody that really needed to vent their anger. And it works. You could go out and do it in the forest with a regular tree, I'm sure, just as well. And it's not hurting anything. The egg bits that are left behind are going to get eaten up by the animals. So that's one thing you can do, is find something to smash that isn't really going to be destructive. Another thing you can do is take a pillow, or a bunch of pillows, and start, hitting the bed with them, or hitting the sofa with them, or hitting the floor with them. Get down on the floor, smash the pillow against the carpeting. It feels good. It gets out some adrenaline, some, energy that you need to dispel from the anger. So you can do that one. Another tip is, if you're into working out, or for instance running or going and lifting weights, or you're into dance, use that. Use the anger to propel you through those activities. It can really be very, very helpful. One of the things that I knew a lot of clients did, and I've done myself, is find a safe place to just scream it out sometimes. Sometimes when you're really angry, you just want to scream. You can do that in your apartment or house, as long as you're not disturbing someone else. You can go out in the forest and do it. You can do it in your car, as long as you're not driving. Please, no road rage. And you can scream in your car. Pull over somewhere where you're by yourself in a parking lot, the end of a lot or something. Roll your windows up and scream. It really does feel good. And I used to have to do that sometimes even when I was a bereavement counselor and I was going through a particularly tough day. At the end of the day, we'd go park somewhere, get out a few screams, and that really helped with the frustration and the anger. And then one of the things that I think is very helpful in working with your grief or working with the anger is whatever you're angry about, sit down with just a pad of paper, not a journal. You don't want to keep this. So you just sit down with a pad of paper, like a legal pad or something. And for 15 minutes, set yourself a time limit, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, probably not more than 30 minutes. It's going to be exhausting, but write out just feelings. Don't make complete sentences. It doesn't have to make sense. You can write, I hate this, that, the other thing, like 500 times if you want to. But get out the anger on paper. Use 4-letter words. It doesn't matter because nobody else is going to see this. Get it out on paper and don't reread it. And trust me, generally when you get that angry and you're writing that down, you're going to start crying as well while you're doing it. And that's good, very healing. Go ahead and cry while you're being angry. The two work great together. So you write that out and then you rip it up into tiny little pieces. And you either just throw it away or you burn it in a little, safe container so you don't start a fire somewhere. But that one I've done myself, very, very helpful. In fact, the effects of that, the positive effects of that are powerful. So those are some ways you can get out anger in a very healthy way. Do it as often as you need to, whenever it arises. And trust me, if you clear that anger from your system as it arises, it won't make you sick, it's not going to hurt other people, and it will really help you on your healing journey. So until next time, be well, stay strong.